Hey folks, how you doing? Thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you very much for watching on the replay. Now, I am Gary Jones, and we're going to be talking all about podcasting today and how to create them, how to prepare for it, how to record it, and then how to maximize them. So, first of all, if you are watching on the replay, thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching live, you're godsend. Thank you very much. And today, as I said, we're going to be talking about podcasts. And I'm going to be covering 3 points on podcasting. I'm going to be talking about the preparation about it. I'm going to talk about how to create it, the preparation, how to record it, so the technology involved in it, and potentially the hints and tips if you're interviewing people, how to do it, and also where to share it to get maximum impact. So I'm going to talk about hosting, I'm going to be talking about sharing, I'm going to be talking about the marketing of it. So I'm going to be covering 3 parts today. And all of this information is also available on the website, www.growmarketingmedia.com, under the free guides and downloads, and I'll be posting a link to that PDF in the notes here. Now, if you are a podcast listener, let us know, post it in the comments below, and let us know what type of podcasts, first of all, you listen to. Now, by letting us know what types of podcasts you listen to, gives us a really good idea about your habits and about the content that actually you are absorbing and listening to. Just bear with me just for a second. Sorry, postman's just came and delivered a letter for me. Dog's just chewed it. So, podcasting. Remember, if you do listen to podcasts, let us know what they are below. I'm going to get straight on with really the preparation and the planning for a podcast. Now, first of all, for the people who don't know, what is a podcast? So a podcast is literally an audio file that you can share with people. It's simply that. It's video without the picture. It's a way of people absorbing information from you on the go. So if they're driving, they can listen to it. If they are walking a dog, you can listen to it. If you're running, you're jogging, you're exercising, video requires your mind to actually visualize see the visual images. Podcasts, you don't have to worry about that. And it's all done by audio. So first of all, if you're not happy with yourself on screen or on video, podcasting is a great way of still sharing that message and conveying your information, your value to your audience. So that's what podcast is. It is literally an audio file, normally an MP3 or an MP4, one of the two, or a WAV file, depending on which way you want to save it. But the big thing is with a podcast is they are growing massively. 80% of people in the USA listen to at least one podcast a week. In the UK at the moment, it's 25 to 30%. So straight away, you can see that the market in the UK is catching up with America, but people are still starting and understanding what podcast is. And more importantly, marketers and people who want to convey information have been doing it for a while. Now, I set up my first podcast probably 4 years ago, when I was founder of Lemonton Hour and running Lemonton Hour, and I used that as a platform to interview people and understand their experiences, their passions, and give insights into their specialist field. I loved it. From there, I've probably produced over 200 podcasts, and I'm producing the current Business Success Network podcast at the moment, which you can hear on Mixcloud and on other platforms. And we interview the monthly guests, the guests on the front page of the Business Success magazine. And this is why I'm doing this Facebook Live for you today. I've made loads of mistakes. It's taken me hours and hours and hours to make my first podcast, where actually it didn't have to take me any more than a half hour to an hour. And I've busted loads of misconceptions, and I've helped different people launch their own podcasts and also their own radio shows. Because once you've got the MP3 file, once you've got the MP4 file or WAV file, you can then pass it on to different people, and they can use it for their radio stations, for their own podcasts, and you can become guests on their own shows as well. So podcasting is spot on. It's a great way of you sharing information. So as I said, we're going to split it into three different parts: planning, preparing, hosting, recording, and then the sharing and marketing of it. So the planning, preparing part of it, you've got to make sure that you can dedicate enough time, first of all, to the actual show. It's going to take a lot of time to start off with to produce it, and so you've got to make sure, first of all, you have got the right amount of time to do it. And if you're looking at maybe an hour or two a week, or an hour or two a month to produce a 15 minute to 20 minute show, yeah, that would work. That would work. Always think about how much time you've got to produce something, because if you're going to produce a piece of content regularly, you need to make sure that you can deliver on it. You've also got to make sure that you decide what type of podcast you want it to be. Is it going to be you talking into a microphone and you sharing experiences? Are you going to have guests coming in and talking about their experiences? Are you going to be on location talking to people at events? All of these bits you've got to consider. And you've got to consider really who you're going to get on the show, but also what format the show is going to be. How long also it's going to be is a really big important question. It typically takes 4 times the amount of show to produce a show. So a 15-minute show will normally take about an hour to produce. That's kind of the rule of thumb, but it's not quite like. The longer the show, sometimes the easier it gets, but you've got to make sure you've got the listener's value. Main thing is you've got to organise how long the show's going to be, what format it's going to be, and who's going to be part of it. Also, you've got to make sure you know how often you're going to do it. You're going to release it. Doing an hour show once a week is a massive undertaking. But doing a 15-minute show bi-weekly or once a month is a lot more affordable for your time, but also probably a better use of your time to start off, because you can always increase it. So you've got to decide on the frequency of the show as well. You've got to think about what audience you're going to want to listen to it and what existing network you've already got, so therefore you can plan and really get the content to add value to those people. Now, my instincts and what I'd recommend to you is, if you are thinking about doing a podcast, take a look at your current audience and ask them the question: what would they like to listen to on a podcast? Simple question, but if you don't answer it, if you don't ask it, you won't get an answer. So by you physically thinking, okay, what do I want to do? What does my audience want to actually hear? You are going to win the battle, because you're already going to have a pre-existing audience, all network, who want to listen to your content. So that's really what you want to do, is you want to make sure you know your audience, so you know what content to produce. You've also got to figure out what you want to get out of it. Now, it might sound strange, but really a podcast is a use of your time. So you need to make sure that the payoff for you is greater than the payoff of not doing it. Otherwise, there's no point. So you've got to figure out, okay, is it going to be purely market awareness? Am I going to be doing it just to make sure that I am positioned in the right place in my market? Am I going to do it because it's going to drive sales to me? So it's going to be a sales funnel part. And I suppose it depends on what part of your sales matrix this goes into. Am I doing it purely for value? And this is why I do podcasts. I do it purely for value. So I try to give as much hints and tips free of charge as I can. If people want to then pay me for extra services or for clarification on different points, great. But I want to give as much away free of charge as possible, hence doing this podcast now. And hence doing this Facebook Live now. But then also you've got to figure out actually what benefit is it going to be to do one with different people in. And I'll go on to that in a bit. But you've got to make sure that you know what your objective is for your podcast. If you're just doing it because you want to do a podcast, that's not good enough, because your time, your listeners' time, is worth more than just doing a podcast for the sake of doing a podcast. You've also got to consider, where are you going to be doing and where are you going to be recording the podcast? Ideally, you need to be somewhere quiet. You don't have to have a studio. There's different things out there, which means you don't have to record using a high-tech system. But you want to make sure that you are in a place where you're quiet, it's nice and straightforward, you feel comfortable. If you've got guests coming in, they feel comfortable. That's the big thing. So you've got to figure out if you want to make sure you've got a place to go. Now, for recording and editing your podcast, this is all about, really getting down to it. You've organised the venue, you've organised the guests, you know what format you're going to have, you know what you're going to say in the show, so it's just about recording. How can you do it? Straightforward, nice and easy. You don't really need much equipment, but you want to make sure that your audio sounds brilliant. Best way to do that is, if you've got a smartphone, you can start by using your smartphone. That's the entry level. So if you look at kind of the scale, entry level is your phone. Recording it on your phone, like using an app called BossJock or Audio Boom or anything else like Anchor is another good one. And going all the way to the top, you've got a professional studio. There's a massive range in between now. And the thing is, you can start at the bottom and go to the top. And starting at the bottom only has to cost you your time, because Anchor, which is a free podcasting platform, is free of charge. You don't have to worry about charging. You don't have to worry about paying even. So in terms of kind of recording, you've got your different levels. Now, I started my podcast by recording the audio into my phone. On BossJock, what you can do is you can record the mini segments, and then you can put them all together and record it as one file. Then once you've got the file, then you can put it into different places for hosting and sharing. But you don't have to make it any more complicated than it has to be. Now, to get the audio a little bit better than just recording it on your phone, you can get a microphone. Now, a microphone can cost 20 quid for a lapel mic, which is great for events, great for cutting out any background noise. Not so great if you've got a bid and you've got a lapel mic Clay, you just need to position it further below. But the main thing is, that the quality is going to be on point and your audience is going to get the best audio experience they can get. So a lapel mic is kind of step 1 above your phone. Step 2 is getting a professional mic, and you can do that by getting a USB mic and plugging it into your laptop, and then using a software like GarageBand on a Mac or Audacity on a PC, just to name one on each platform. But then if you've got a USB mic going into a microphone, then that makes the quality so much better. And if you've got a microphone, it looks more professional than doing it on your phone. The quality on some of the lower mics is probably as good as your phone, if I'm being honest. Your phone microphone will be pretty good if you've got a new smartphone, or at least a smartphone that's probably about a year or two old. But so you really want to invest in a good microphone if you want to do that. But you can get USB, so you can plug it into your phone. You can get a lightning port, so you can plug it into your phone, USB into your laptop. The main thing is making sure that you're happy doing it. But if you're just starting out, don't worry about loads of equipment. Equipment can scare people. You don't need that level of equipment. Getting the best audio is probably going to be best. Now, the thing is, with podcasting, it doesn't have to be long. And 15 to 30 minutes is probably an ideal time for a podcast. You can have longer podcasts, but actually 15 to 30 minutes is an easy way of starting out. And another way of doing a podcast when you're recording is figuring out if you're going to live stream it as well. You see, Facebook Lives, Periscopes, YouTube Live, anywhere where you're going live, you're talking to an audience like this, you can strip the audio, you can save it onto your phone or onto your computer. You can then strip the audio, and that can become a podcast. So you don't have to have equipment there. You just need to make sure the settings right, sound quality is going to be right, and also you're going to make sure that, again, you're providing value, but the person on the other end can hear what you're saying and it's clear. People who do podcasts and the sound quality is poor, you're not going to get any listeners. You're not going to get anything from it. So you need to make sure that actually your equipment is based on what it is. But also, live streaming during a podcast, recording a podcast, is a great way of engaging different people, because they might join halfway through, but they might want to listen to the podcast all the way through. So they'll listen to it again. You're also creating 2 pieces of content from one time. So again, good use of your time. So have a think about that when you're looking at recording your podcasts. Also, you've got to figure out whether you're going to be editing what people are going to say. And if you are going to be editing, things like Audacity and GarageBand can do a really, really good job at doing this. But the main thing is to think about what you want to come across in the podcast. You see, I listen to many podcasts, and some of them edit it, and you can tell maybe when they edit it because the voice kind of glitches, or they record it all in one go. Now, remember, if you do listen to podcasts, please put them below. Also, at this point, if you haven't tried making a podcast or you have got a podcast, let us know below as well. So put it in the comments, and if you're watching a replay, please still put them in the comments and I'll check those out later. And if you've got a podcast that you want to share, put it below, put it in the comments, whether this is on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is, still slide it below. So when I talk about editing, you can do this on Audacity. You do this on GarageBand. You can do it, to be fair, on your phone. You just got to decide whether once the interview starts rolling, or when you press record, if you are going to stop. That's the big question. Because if you don't, and halfway through the person thinks, oh, okay, I've made a mistake, I'll just start again, and you've got 15 minutes of really golden interview, you've got to decide whether to save it or not. You want to make sure you're completely crystal right at the start. Now, what I would recommend for recording is record in 5 to 10 minute parts. And the reason why I say that is because if you've got a 15-minute podcast, what you want really is separating it maybe into 2 or 3 different parts and having 30-second kind of gaps in between each part. This way, if someone hasn't got time to listen to the whole 15 minutes, and they've got different points where they can stop listening, but also it means, I hate to say it, if you mess up, 12 and a half minutes in or 27 and a half minutes into a half-hour podcast, you don't have to worry about it, and you just have to re-record as one of those sections. Also, you can use those individual sections as different parts of different podcasts. So actually, it works both ways. The main thing is you've got to make sure that the podcast is entertaining all the way through. Now, I listened to a really cool podcast called 3 Marketers Walk Into a Podcast, and their podcasts are typically between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. There's 2 hosts. You've got an interviewee who comes into it, and they've got a really cool way of separating it. They've got one advert about 15 minutes in. They've got then 2 games that they play with the person who they're interviewing. One of which is a kind of true or false game, and one of them is a quick fire game. And they also have a club singer style, which is really, really cool. But the whole point is it breaks it up, so it's not just one person talking all the way through. Because after 20 minutes of hearing the same person talking, unless they're providing damn good value, hey, everyone's going to switch off. So just make sure that you're keeping it entertaining and you're breaking it up. I would recommend recording it in chunks of, as I say, 10, 15 minutes, just to make sure. Once you've recorded all the parts and you've put the podcast all together, you might have included music in it, so you can get royalty-free jingles from iTunes or Spotify that you can download. Once you've put it all together and you've got the complete MP3 file, then back it up. And I would even back up the interviews even before that. Because what you don't want to do, and I've done this in the past and it's not a good feeling, is have it all saved in one place, and in that one place either fail, break, lose battery so it loses all the data, whatever happens to it, it doesn't back up and you've lost all the content. It's a really bad feeling once you've recorded 3 or 4 hours worth of content and it all disappears. You don't want to do that. You don't want that have to happen to you. So back it up straight away. So if I'm using a dictaphone, for instance, with an SD memory card, I will put that straight into my computer at the soonest opportunity to back it up. At least that way, I know that my content is there, it's safe, and do you know what? It doesn't matter what happens to the dictaphone, it's backed up in somewhere else. Another way is if you're recording it on your phone, make sure you've got something like Dropbox or Google Drive and save it in there as well. You can't have too many backups, and if you've got it on Google Drive or Dropbox, if one device fails, then you can transfer it to another device, fairly straightforward. But make sure you back it up, especially if you're doing interviews, because you don't really want to make that call to that person and say, hey, can you come back in and do the interview again? It's just a no-go. Just don't do it. So in the recording and editing bit, that's pretty much all covered. But make sure also during that stage, you're using it to market the podcast. So let's say if you've got a guest in, you can use that to take a quick selfie with the guest and release it on social media as a sneak peek. You can make sure you get all of their contact details, so therefore right at the end of it and right at the end of the podcast, people can find more information about them. And also you can supply that in the show notes, whatever you want to do. So yes, that's a really good way of doing it, but make sure you share the contact links and use that stage to market it. You could also maybe record just a very small tiny bit and release that, or do a quick video or quick live stream at that stage. The main thing is when the interview is next to you, you've got to make sure that you get all the information you possibly can. That's the big thing. And remember, if let's say you're listening to this and you just joined me now, thank you very much. Or if you're watching on replay and you're still listening but you can't keep up with notes, don't worry. I'll be posting a PDF version of this which goes into a little bit more detail into the notes and into the comments below. So don't worry. And also, this Facebook Live that I'm doing at the moment will be turned into an episode of Social Media Surgery, which is my podcast. So therefore, you can still receive all the great information that I'm sharing with you and also get the value from it. But again, I'll put those links after that. So you've prepared, you've planned, you've hosted, you've edited, and now you've got the file. What do you do then? Well, there's a number of things you can do, but the main thing is you need to have somewhere to host the podcast. Now, you could pull it onto your website. If your website's fancy enough that you can have you can have a podcasting section, great. Drives traffic, people will stay longer on your website, and while they're there, they will check other stuff out. Great idea, really good idea. If that's not possible, you could put it onto another place such as SoundCloud, Mixcloud. You could put it onto Stitcher, you could put it onto Spotify, you could put it onto Audioboom, you could put it onto Mixcloud, SoundCloud, loads of other stuff. So there are places where you can post your podcast, and once you've got your podcast hosted somewhere, you'll have a URL that then you can share on social media that people can do it. Also, let's say if you've got it on Mixcloud or SoundCloud, you can create an RSS feed to other places, which means that podcast, once you upload it into that one place, will then be distributed into different places. So for instance, if you're on SoundCloud or Audioboom, just to name two, you can then get your podcast sent straight from there to your website. You can send it to iTunes, you can send it to other people's blogs, or wherever else you want to go to it. You can also then get it onto your social media if you wanted to, but I'll go on to why I probably wouldn't do that at that point. I will make a separate post, but talk about that in a bit. The main thing is, you've got it somewhere where people can listen to it. Now, once it's hosted in a particular place, that place will have its own following, that place will have its own kind of ecosystem, so therefore you can then share it with that audience as well. So you can include hashtags and descriptions. You can use tags where people searching for business podcasts might pick up your podcast if it's related to that topic. The main thing is really looking at the different sections and checking it out. The ones that you really want to be on are the big ones that people search. Stitcher, iTunes are the two big ones. And you'll find this Business Success Network podcast on those two platforms very, very soon. At the moment, the Business Success Network podcast is on Mixcloud and also on the brand new app which Simon Toon is creating at the moment. Now, once the app is up and running, I will be sharing the Business Success Network podcast across more platforms, just to make sure that actually you can hear it anywhere where you are already listening to podcasts. But the main thing is hosting it in one place where you know how to upload it. Sometimes, like Anchor, it's free of charge, so you don't have to worry about cost. Places like Mixcloud, SoundCloud, Audio Boom, Stitcher, there's going to be a charge, but it's not that much. You're looking at less than £10 a month to host it. And you've got to decide whether actually it's good use of your marketing budget and time. If you think it is, podcasting is a great way of doing it. Then, once you've got that link, you can share it on your social media. And this is the important bit. What you can do is you can go to, you can use it in many different ways. The main thing is once you've got that link, you can share it onto Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn as a straight post. And what I will do is if I've got a guest, I'll share that with them. So therefore they can share it with their audience. I'd also share them the actual file as well. So they can upload it onto the website, whatever they want to do. It's their content as well, as far as I'm concerned. So why not share it? But the main thing is sharing it with your audience, not just once, but 2 or 3 times. Reason being is people are busy. People kind of update their social media often and go away, lead their lives and come back to check social media. So actually, by repeating the messages not once, not twice, but 3 times over the course of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you're not bombarding them with messages, but you're just sharing this message with them. And if people haven't missed post number 1, they might see post number 2. If they've missed both of those, they might do number 3. I can't do 3. 3. You get the idea. So for me, this is all about sharing it with your audience so they get the best value from it. You can share previous episodes. You can share upcoming episodes. I make a little picture or a little poster for each episode so I can use that as a piece of collateral to share with them. The main thing is once you've got a podcast, you do want to share it and you want to put it into as many different places as possible. And finally, in terms of what your podcast could be about, because I haven't covered that yet, is it can be about anything that you are passionate about. Podcasting doesn't have to be complicated. As I said, it doesn't have to cost you anything if you've got a smartphone. What you want to do though is you want to spend the time thinking about what message you want to send out about your passion. If it's about health and well-being, you can share tips about that. If it's about business, share tips. If you want to share stuff about marketing, if you want to share stuff about your, hobby, football, horse riding, swimming, whatever it will be, you can create a podcast. Best thing to do really, if you did want to start, go onto iTunes, go onto Stitcher, go onto Audio Boom, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, whatever platform you want to check out, go onto it and start listening to a few and start searching for ones in your industry and see what it's about. You will soon find that there's a few that you might love, there might be a few that you don't like, and a few that you like bits of but you want to change them. And then you will get a much, much, much better idea about what type of podcast you want. So, just to quickly recap in 1 minute, we've spoken about the planning and preparation, recording and editing, and sharing and marketing of your podcast. You've basically got to decide what format your podcast is going to be. How long is it going to be? How often is it going to be released? Who are you going to have on your show? And therefore, where are you going to record it? Then, you're going to figure out what equipment am I going to need? Am I going to do it on my phone? Do I need it in the studio? Do I want to invest in equipment like a mic, lapel mic, whatever that will be? You then got to organise your time to figure out when and where am I going to do it and get the people involved to come in and meet in one place. Then, you can record it. And you can record it in a number of different ways. I said you can record it on your phone, you can use USB mics, you can do whatever you want to do. The main thing really is figuring out where you want to go, because once you've pressed record and once you started, you want to keep going. You don't want to stop. Then after everything's recorded, you back it up. You share that with different people if you want to at that stage. You edit it and then you've got your final file. Once you've got your final file, then you can put it onto something like SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Stitcher, Audio Boom, wherever it is, iTunes, and then you can start sharing it with your public. That is podcasting 101 right there. Now, thank you very much for listening today. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and I will speak to you all later. Remember, check out the Business Success Network podcast, which is released every month. Also, check out my podcast, which is a social media surgery, where we talk about things just like this. Take care, my friends, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.